Article 7 Training, Rule 36, General Administration of Programs, Instructional Curricula, Materials, Equipment, and Assistive Technology Devices.
Each student with a disability is expected to be involved in and progress in the general education curriculum to the maximum extent feasible. The level of the student's involvement in the general curriculum is determined by the student's case conference committee.
The public agency may supplement the general education curriculum with modified programs of instruction or curriculum that relate to state academic standards and functional skills to be achieved. The materials and supplies provided to students with disabilities must be comparable to those provided to non-disabled students.
A student's case conference committee must determine whether the student needs instructional materials, including print instructional materials, in an accessible format.
Accessible format means an alternate approach to presenting information to a student with a disability.
Accessible formats may be purchased ready for use by students with disabilities, developed for use by students with disabilities, or modified from existing materials. If existing materials are to be modified, federal and state copyright laws need to be followed.
Accessible formats could include Braille, audio, digital text, large type, tactile graphics, video, captions, audio descriptions.
This list may not be exhaustive of all accessible formats. As technology improves, instructional materials become available in more and different ways.
If a student's case conference committee determines that a student needs instructional materials in an accessible format that are not print instructional materials, the public agency must ensure that the student receives the instructional materials at the same time other students receive the instructional materials.
The public agency must take all reasonable steps to ensure that students who need print instructional materials in accessible formats are provided those materials at the same time as other students receive instructional materials.
One reasonable step a public agency could take is to require publishers or other contractors to, at a minimum, provide the National Instructional Materials Access Center, NIMAC, with electronic files containing the content of the print instructional materials using the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard, NIMAS.
These files must be provided to the NIMAC with sufficient time, according to the policies and procedures established by the Department of Education, receive instructional materials at the same time as other students receive the instructional materials.
Another reasonable step is for the public agency to have a means of acquiring print instructional materials in accessible formats according to policies and procedures established by the Department of Education, including for students who transfer into the public agency after the start of the school year.
Reasonable steps would not include withholding print instructional materials from other students until print instructional materials in accessible formats are available.
When a student needs print instructional materials in an accessible format, the public agency must determine whether the student is a student with a print disability. This determination is guided by the Federal Act to provide books for adult blind.
This decision may require the public agency to obtain a written certification statement from a competent authority according to policies and procedures established by the Department of Education.
A competent authority is a recognized expert who attests to the physical basis of the visual, perceptual, or other physical disability that limits the student's use of standard print, in accordance with policies and procedures established by the Department of Education.
If the student is determined to not to be a student with a print disability, or if the student needs print instructional materials that cannot be produced from NIMAS files, the public agency is responsible to ensure the student receives the print instructional materials in accessible formats in a timely manner.
Charges to the parent for textbook rental, incidental fees, or any other fees permitted by state statute or rule do not violate the at-no-cost requirement.
Unless the student's case conference committee determines otherwise, the public agency is not responsible to provide basic equipment that may be required at home as well as in the educational setting, such as the following: wheelchairs, braces, glasses, and hearing aids.
However, the public agency must provide instructional materials and equipment and assistive technology devices and services, which are specified in the student's IEP. The public agency is responsible for maintenance and repair of all equipment and devices provided by the public agency.
The public agency is not responsible for the cost of repair or replacement of equipment not purchased by the public agency. However, the public agency must ensure that hearing aids worn in school by students who are deaf or hard of hearing are functioning properly.
The public agency is not responsible for the post-surgical maintenance, programming, or replacement of a student with a disability's medical device that has been surgically implanted or of an external component of the surgically implanted medical device. However, the public agency must ensure that the external components of the surgically implanted medical devices are functioning properly.
On a case-by-case basis, the use of school-purchased assistive technology devices in a student's home or in other settings is required if the student's case conference committee determines that the student needs access to those devices in order to receive a free, appropriate public education.